Hello and welcome to Breaking Bread, where nothing is off the table. For today's episode, I want to talk about the breaking news coming out of Saudi Arabia that a joint defensive agreement has been signed between Turkey, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, there's breaking news coming out of Mecca in Saudi Arabia that a joint defensive agreement has been signed between Turkey, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan.
The leaders of Saudi Arabia, Turkey and Pakistan have signed a joint defence agreement. The deal comes at a time of heightened regional tensions due to the US-Iran war. It was signed by the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif in Mecca.
We know that Shehbaz Sharif was already in Jeddah yesterday along with Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia, and they were awaiting President of Turkey Recep Tayyip Erdogan to arrive in order for them to discuss the deal. So information coming out prior to Erdogan's touchdown in Saudi Arabia was that a deal could possibly be on the table. However, we have now been informed that a deal has been inked and it is now put into effect. I think it is referred to as the Mecca Agreement. So the deal is effectively a defense cooperation deal between Pakistan, Saudi Arabia and Turkey. Now, if you recall, last year, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia signed a defense agreement. There was some contention as to whether the nuclear deterrent that Pakistan holds was a part of that deal or not. There was a lot of back and forth. However, it was subsequently understood that Pakistan would possibly provide a nuclear umbrella to Saudi Arabia should Saudi Arabia be attacked. You'll find that since the inking of that deal between the Pakistanis and the Saudis, Saudi Arabia had been attacked by Iran and Pakistan had been attacked by the Taliban from Afghanistan. In all those instances, the only thing that ever came into effect was rhetoric from either Saudi Arabia, but predominantly from Pakistan, because Saudi Arabia was on the receiving end far more often and in the news than Pakistan. And each time there were attacks on Saudi sovereign territory or assets in Saudi Arabia, whether they were Saudi assets or American assets, the Pakistanis always issued a stern warning and condemnation for the attacks, and that was about it. So it leaves one to wonder what was the purpose of the defense agreement if all the Pakistanis ever did were issue stern condemnations. When the Houthis attacked Saudi interests, stern condemnations once again were put forward by Shehbaz Sharif. But no military action, no military posturing, nothing of the sort. You then had Kuwait that expressed interest in a deal. However, we know that Turkey was also planning on joining in on this defense cooperation. And now we see that that has become the de facto position between these three countries. We know that according to the Turks, Erdogan says that it is purely a defensive agreement.
Turkey is describing it as, quote, purely defensive in nature.
But let's be honest, in geopolitics today, the word defensive can take on any number of connotations. It is not defensive as one would understand it in the true context of the word, because the ambiguity and absurdity that lies within that phrase or within that word and the different viewpoints and the amount of spin that can be put on defensive action and offensive action, the lines are so blurred and murky that it could mean anything in geopolitics today. We also know that the Pakistanis, as usual, come out with the usual rhetoric: an attack against one is an attack against all.
Pakistani Foreign Minister says under the agreement, an attack against any of the three countries will be considered an attack against them all.
But having had experience of the existing treaty between the Pakistanis and the Saudis, we know that whenever either Pakistan or Saudi Arabia has been attacked in the past, all the defense agreement could muster were stern warnings of condemnation and not to engage in such nefarious activity again to the aggrieving party or the aggressor. So how much of weight this is going to hold, we don't know as yet. I suppose time will tell, because at the moment Saudi Arabia is facing a major problem from Iran. But we know that the Pakistanis, especially Asim Munir, has been making money hand and fist off the back of this war between Iran and America. So he was playing the Americans against the Iranians and the Iranians against the Americans, all the while he and Wahidi, together with the Saudis, were making money getting oil transported across into Pakistan. And this is why General Jack Keane, the mouthpiece of the United States administration, said about a week ago on Fox News that Donald Trump has come to realize that some allies that professed to be involved in negotiations were actually double dealing and serving as a conduit for Iranian oil to flow through. And he was referring to Pakistan. This defense agreement was signed in Mecca, and you can't help but look at the significance of the place where it was signed. Mecca is the holiest place in Islam. Being the holiest place in Islam, and these three countries being Muslim countries, signals that this is a Muslim bloc that is being formed. And we'll get to why this bloc is being formed and what is the purpose of each of these groups in this bloc being formed in a minute. But also, when you look at another level of understanding as to why this deal was inked in Saudi Arabia, the fact that the Pakistanis and the Turks had to go to Saudi Arabia to sign a deal in Mecca, whether they like it or not, MBS has been flexing. He is saying not only to the world, but he is also saying to the Pakistanis and the Turks, guys, any aspirations you have of assuming the throne of the de facto capo di tutti capi within the Ummah is not going to happen. Mecca is in Saudi Arabia. I am the king in the Ummah, and I call you to do my bidding in my country. The fact that you have to fly and come in and sign a deal here tells you who is boss in the Ummah. I'll unpack this a bit for you. The Saudis, being Arab, have always been the de facto leaders within the Islamic Caliphate. However, when the Caliphate passed on to the Ottoman Empire, which were Turks, the Saudis lost that mantle. The Turks got a taste for what it was to be the leader of the Muslim Ummah, and Erdogan is trying to revive that.
Türkiye, Türkiye'den büyüktür. Bunu böyle bilelim. Yani biz 780 bin kilometre kareye hapsolamayız. Çünkü bizim fiziki sınırlarımız başkadır, gönül sınırlarımız bambaşkadır. Musul'daki, Kerkük'teki, Haseke'deki, Halep'teki, Humus'taki, Mısrata'daki, Üsküp'teki, Kırım'daki, Kafkasya'daki kardeşlerimiz fiziki sınırlarımız dışında olabilir. Ama hepsi gönül sınırlarımızın içindedir, kalbimizin tam ortasındadır. Devlet ve millet tarihimizi 90 yılla sınırlandırmaya kalkanlara izin vermeyeceğiz. İlk öğretimden itibaren, ki bunu artık anaokulları diyoruz, itibaren ders kitaplarının bu çerçevede yeniden gözden geçirilmesi dahil milletimizi tarihiyle, kültürüyle, medeniyetiyle buluşturacak her türlü adımı süratle atmalıyız.
So the point I'm trying to make here is that there are underlying tensions. The Iranians, being Shia, want to usurp the throne of leader of the Ummah from the Saudis. The Saudis want to hold on to it. The Qataris are thinking, hang on, we're Arab, we have a shot at it. We've got all this wealth. You've got the Turks that fancy another shot at the empire or the caliphate. That means wresting control away from the Saudis. And the Pakistanis, who originally come from Hindu descent in India, are so hell-bent on trying to wash away their history and deny their origins that they have openly claimed that they are Arab, they are Turk, they are anything but what they are genetically and ancestrally.
अपने बच्चों को जो है आपने जरूर सुनानी है ताकि वो पाकिस्तान की कहानी ना भूलें. Well, our forefathers, they thought that we are different from the Hindus in every possible aspect of life. Our religion is different, our customs are different, our traditions are different, our thoughts are different, our ambitions are different. That was the foundation of the two-nation theory that was laid there. That we are two nations, we are not one nation. So because of that, our forefathers, they struggled, mounted that incessant struggle to create this country. Our forefathers, they have sacrificed immensely, and we have sacrificed a lot for the creation of this country, and we know how to defend it. My dear brothers and sisters and sons and daughters, please don't forget this story.
And Pakistan feels that it has a shot because remember, they are a bunch of convertees to Islam, and you will never get a more vociferous supporter, a more vile supporter of an ideology than one that has converted, because they have everything to prove. And the Pakistanis are doing exactly that. You know, you'll often come across posts and comments from people saying that, you know, the Arabs look at the Pakistanis and wonder, how is it that they have become this way? Because even the Arabs in Saudi Arabia don't behave this way towards the religion of Islam. So the level of fervor within Pakistan, within Bangladesh, borders on lunacy and insanity. But I'm going to explain to you why it is important for the Pakistanis to be in this defensive pact. Let's look at what each of these nations bring to the defensive pact. The Saudis bring to it money. They have oil, they have gas, they have funds. They have the full weight of Islam behind them, because Mecca and Medina and the land of the Prophet and the land where Islam started from is in their sovereign territory. So that is what they bring to the table. The Turks bring a formidable army. a military defense infrastructure that is purely Islamic and reliant on themselves. But furthermore, they bring to the table a very well-trained NATO level army to the table, which neither the Pakistanis nor the Saudis can put forward. You must remember, the Saudis are getting hammered by the Iranians. The Pakistanis are getting hammered by the BLA, by the Taliban, by the Afghanis, by, the people in KP, in Sindh. So there's not much that they have to offer there. So the Turks coming in with this NATO trained army, they seem to think that this is the bee's knees. However, let's look at what NATO is actually undergoing in Ukraine. You've got the combined effort of NATO, the European Union, the United Kingdom, the United States of America. You've got Pakistan supplying ammunition and artillery to the Ukrainian effort, yet they are still incapable of stopping the Russian onslaught. Now, when you think of Ukraine, every time you put on the newspaper, the TV, or you read the newspaper, they tell you how the Russians are losing and the Russians are not doing anything. Let me explain something to you. The Russians are in this with possibly the help of the Chinese, the Iranians and the North Koreans and anybody else that we can muster who we don't like, we can lump them in that same basket. Okay? But actively supporting the Ukrainians, actively supporting them, is the entire NATO machinery, the entire European machinery. That is Eastern Europe, Western Europe, the United Kingdom, and the bulwark of democracy and the number one superpower in the world, the United States. They've all thrown their weight, their money and their ammunition and arms behind Ukraine, and they are still incapable of stopping the Russian onslaught and advance. That tells you something. So if you think that this Turkish army that is trained to NATO spec is something to be looked at in awe, I would wager we need to think again. Because just looking at the performance of NATO in Ukraine sets alarm bells ringing. Then you had when the Pakistanis went in and complicitly with Lashkar-e-Taiba and whoever else they sent in, all their resistance wings in Kashmir and all their terrorist organizations to engage in that massacre against Hindus in Pahalgam. India responded with a befitting reply, Operation Sindoor. And who was behind the Pakistani military at that time when Operation Sindoor was going on? The Americans were there actively on the ground in the bunkers, and the Turks. So again, I'm coming. If you think that this Turkish army is something that is the bee's knees, it may be well trained, it may be well equipped, and it may have a lot more to offer than the rest of what is available in the Muslim world. I certainly don't think it is the saving grace, because when you look at what happened in Operation Sindoor, India single-handedly decapitated the Pakistani establishment's threats towards it and neutralized their threats, as well as sent a reverberating message not only to the Americans, the Chinese and the Turks, but to the Pakistanis as well. Now, what does Pakistan bring to the table? Pakistan brings a begging bowl, because you can be 100% certain in this deal, the Saudis are paying the Pakistanis a retainer fee. They are paying the Pakistanis for guaranteeing their safety and security. I don't know how that works out. And they are paying the Turks because they're going to be investing in Turkish artillery and equipment. You've also got the Chinese that are going to be benefiting, because anything that the Pakistanis pass on to the Saudis and to this defense pact is not indigenously grown. It is sponsored by the Chinese. They'll change the name, they'll change the made in, they'll change the flag, and it will be, for all intents and purposes, Pakistani equipment being sent to Saudi Arabia, but actually Chinese. So the Chinese are winning because they are getting a boost to their economy. The Turks are winning because they're getting a boost to the economy. The Pakistani elite are winning, not the people, because they still kept in abject poverty They still can't afford 2 square meals a day and to keep the lights on and to fuel their vehicles. And the Saudis, gullible as ever, are throwing money at it because they believe that throwing money at a problem solves the problem. The other thing, apart from the begging bowl that Shehbaz Sharif brings to the table, because he's going to somewhere in here ink a deal where Saudi Arabia continues to bankroll Pakistan's spiraling debt crisis, because the Chinese are fed up. They are absolutely fed up. Pakistan then brings their nukes to the table. But you need to understand, the nukes in Pakistan, the development was funded by the Saudis. The nukes in Pakistan, I suspect that they do not control the keys to those nukes. The keys to the nuclear button, I think, are controlled by the American. So everything that you see happening here are the Americans outsourcing their responsibilities in the Gulf to Pakistan and Turkey. This, I believe, is what is actually going on. And the Chinese, I'd like to think that they're not stupid, but everything is pointing to the fact that they're being used and abused by the Pakistanis. America is pivoting towards China and they are strengthening their alliances in that region. The Pakistanis and Turks are using it to develop a Muslim defense pact, and you can see that the world is now starting to become split. You can see where the boundaries are being drawn. You can see where alliances are being forged, where alliances are being broken, and you can see down the line where problems are going to emerge and where enemies are going to become friends and friends are going to become enemies, just to deal with an emerging sinister threat that is being allowed to happen. You're going to find probably Kuwait, Qatar, and other Muslim states joining this organization or this defensive pact. It's not something that is just going to go away. How powerful is it going to be? I don't know, because for now everything they've done is just bluster. When you look at the heavyweights that they're going to come up against 10 years, 15 years, 50 years from today, when you look at the heavyweights they're going to come up against, I don't think they stand a chance. I really don't think they stand a chance. And I think what India displayed during Operation Sindoor regarding belligerent nuclear armed nations is something the world sat back and took notice of. And I think moving forward, it's going to be a game plan that the world is going to look at and adopt when dealing with belligerent nuclear nations. So I want to thank you for spending time with us. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode, and please remember to like, share and subscribe, as it helps us with the algorithm and it helps our channel to grow.